Hi, Josh and Ev. Thanks for talking to me today. So my first question is, when did you first become interested in performing at the arts?
I kind of got into performing by accident. I didn't really, when I was younger, I didn't know how to make friends or like speak and stuff, and I didn't know I had autism. So what did I do? My mom was like, yeah, you need to go and learn how to speak, like go to a theatre company or something. So when I was 15, I joined a theatre company, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. Like I can actually speak, even though I'm scared of the surroundings, but for some reason, being on stage or having a script meant that I wasn't scared of expressing myself because I knew the structure. And that's when I was like, this makes sense to me.
I'm not as eloquent as Ev. I'm more eloquent on the page, but I think it was more with me. It was a case of probably that I realised performing wasn't necessarily for me, at least in the early stages. That's what probably I'd always written, and I'd always been creative, but I think working as a musician and playing in live bands and trying to do improv and acting, at least in my earlier years when I was less confident, I sort of it encouraged me to pull back from it, maybe consciously, unconsciously, but it made me realize more and more that I wanted to be behind the camera or, behind the screen, behind the script. I realized there's probably some sort of psychological intervention that should happen there, but I was better at projecting what I wanted onto other people.
I know what you mean, Josh, because like when you say that you see yourself as like, what did you use? Projecting what, your story.
Yes.
I'm like the sponge. I don't have anything. I'm just blank. I've got no ideas, nothing. And
well,
so
that's not true.
No, but like I'm just like give me everything. Give me all of your ideas, of your stories, and then I'll.
Yes, I think. Yeah, I think a better word would be muse. You're a muse, like the great sort of poets and philosophers and thinkers all had muses. They weren't blank; they were canvases, and they gave ideas and.
I'm a canvas.
So my next question is, what support have you had, if any, with like your neurodivergency, and what difficulties have you faced?
Well, I was diagnosed rather late, so it wasn't until I was 19 where I realized, or the doctors realized, like, oh, something's not quite right, or she needs help in something, but they couldn't point out what it was. So when I went to drama school, I was getting what's the word? It was when I was at drama school, I was getting I was in between my sort of diagnosis and to figure out what it was that was affecting me. And it takes quite a long time to diagnose autistic women, especially when they're older, because we mask things, and we've already established a way to adapt in the world that's a bit not normal for us. So once I got that, then I was able to get support. I was able to go to therapy and talk about autism and why I might think slightly differently than other people, why I'm heightened in sounds and feelings, and why I overthink things, and why I don't always give eye contact or give too much eye contact. And also why I don't always know when to stop talking, so I can just go on forever. So I want to stop now.
But normally it's me that's having to punctuate myself. Like, it's like you certainly don't. It's no, I think it's well, I was diagnosed. So I'm 32 now, Joseph, and I don't know what it was like for you and how recent it is, but for you, but for me, it's sort of been like a 30-year journey that's still ongoing. You know, I'm sort of still struggling to find answers. I think I was very lucky in that my mum was very knowledgeable quite early on. I think she'd seen a documentary maybe on BBC or Sky very early on. When Sky was on, it might have been a PBS documentary from America, but she said that she picked up with me very early on, which sounds a bit cliche, but I think it was largely because of lack of eye contact. And yeah, she spent a lot of money getting a diagnosis. So this would have been 1990, I think. So I think I was 2. I was just about 2. And I think Mum told me recently that it was the equivalent of like £10,000 she had to pay for a diagnosis. I don't know what it's like these days. Maybe it's a lot more. It seems, I know from friends of mine who have received diagnoses or have autistic children, how hard it is getting ADHD or any kind of neurodiversity diagnoses. But yeah, so I think it was the reverse for me. It's interesting to hear Ev saying about, because Ev talks a lot about her mum, and her mum's extremely, you know, both of us are very lucky in the mum regard, I think. You know, I think it was the reverse for me in that I didn't feel like I had, especially when I left school, I felt like there was no real support infrastructure, or at least autism and neurodiversity was still extremely stigmatized and not really something that people talked about. So I almost kind of backed away from it, not out of shame or anything, but maybe some residual embarrassment that I'd been made to feel mistakenly. And I kind of just threw myself into the deep end. I just wanted to get out into the world and experience it. And I went through a lot of trial and error, socially and professionally, which I'm still working out. But maybe that wasn't the healthiest way to approach it. But in other ways, maybe I wouldn't have gotten as far if I'd listened to the people. You know, like my mum was told quite early on that by a doctor or consultant, don't expect too much out of him. Like, sort of in his life, don't expect too much out of him. You know, and
did the doctor say that to your mum?
Yeah, or a consultant. Well, it's a doctor, yeah, but I don't know. I think he was an autism consultant or specialist, but yeah, that's
that happened to me during my
really?
There was like, you know, relationships. That's not happening. Like, you're gonna be on your own, kind of thing.
It's terrible, isn't it? These are the people
you can prove them wrong. I mean, look.
Yeah, that's quite that's the one good point about it. It's quite rewarding, but.
Now onto like your project. So like, what can you tell me about it, and how did it start, and like when's your performance, and how can everyone see it?
Josh,
do you want me to go?
Yeah.
that sounds a bit arrogant, but I suppose I'm the one who's been with it the longest as the creator. So no, because relating back to what Ev was saying a minute ago, Ev was talking about, and she did a nice little segue, and I'll pretend for Ev's sake that it's intentional to make her look good, but she was talking about female, as I do so well, female masking and autism, and how hard it is to get diagnoses, and that is the core of the play. So I originally wrote the play in April 2018, and it was in response to a call out from a showcase that was happening at the Arcola, funnily enough, which is where the full-length show is going to be next month in November. And that was a 1 minute, they wanted 1 minute pieces. So I did a 1 minute monologue play, which obviously when it was performed ran sort of 10 minutes, because I load my stuff with so much subtext that I think you can make a meal out of like one line or one sentence. And so so that was performed at the Arcola. That was in their big Studio 1, and it was like first play I'd ever written for the script I'd ever written for the stage. 200 people. It was a sold out crowd, which wasn't obviously just for me, but that was quite insane. So luckily I was very proud of it. And then after that, there was a little bit of a gap for some months, and I had a script that I bought at the Arcola, which was Great Apes, which is a fantastic play. And that had been adapted with a theatre company in Bristol called Stepping Out, who are absolutely wonderful. And they're a mental health theatre company, and they're patroned by Mark Rylance because they're based in Bristol. Mark Rylance is Bristolian. And I sent them the script just before Christmas 2018. And literally the next day, the head of the theatre company, Steve, came to me and said, "We really love this. We want to develop it with you and expand it into a full-length play." So we worked on that the next year. And then the following year was a read-through in Bristol, a rehearsed read-through with an audience, which was great and really helped to shape the play. And then from there, the following year, obviously we had COVID, but I had met our fantastic director, Nikki Allpress. I'd sent it to the Arcola. I'd submitted it for their Playwright program, which was a program they have to develop plays, so work in progress plays. Maddie was going to happen as part of that, and then there was a long delay for a year where we didn't hear anything, and Playwright came back, and I heard that Maddie had gotten through, which was amazing, the full-length version. And I think Arcola loved it. This is what I was told anyway. They loved it, but they weren't sure it was quite right. But Nikki had been brought in by Layla, who's the co-artistic director of the Arcola, and Layla had really wanted to work with Nikki and get her in to direct some plays, and wanted her to direct some Playwright plays. And Nikki, I think, had said, she told me she'd said that there's this play by this writer called Josh and Maddie that she really loves. And I'm not sure if at this point she knew they had it, but they said, "Okay, if you're directing it, we'll do it." And then there was a whole process where we cast Ev, and Ev was wonderful in the role, and we were pursuing that, and it was already so developed at this point that with the Arcola, we all mutually decided that it would be better as part of their Today I'm Wiser festival, which is in their new purpose-built outdoor venue called Outside, which is we went to see a play there the other week, didn't we? We went to see Nomad, that's it, by Nell Hardy, which was fantastic, really, really great show, and it's such a great venue. And Outside as well, sort of in a outdoor venue, which works for Maddie supremely well, because obviously Maddie's world is outside, so you've got kind of natural soundscape there, so it saves the sound designer a lot of work, because you've got motorbikes pulling up, delivering or whatever.
All of that.
Always timed really well, like sort of at least they were for Nell's show. Probably for ours, it will be at a really inappropriate moment, like when you tell a joke.
Do you like an insight on what happens in the story?
It's so hard to give an insight about the story without sort of saying it. Like, let me try and be smart about this. So homeless autistic girl is sort of going back to her. Josh, help me.
Okay, I could have done there. I muted myself. Sorry to be polite, but because the cat was meowing.
I don't want to give it away, but I've got all the words in my head, so I don't know how to.
Okay, so homeless autistic girl going back to her roots, and after a long time away, and basically it's a monologue play. So she's reliving and retelling the story of her life, how she got to be where she is, the people she's met along the way, and she implements a number of artistic devices. So she's got a very creative flair. She's very much a performer, so she incorporates quick change costumes, so fancy dress, sort of like, you know, homemade costumes, props, and sort of recreates these characters she's met along the way or have been significant in her life. I don't know how. It's a very tricky one. I don't know how much, because I don't want to give it away. But I mean, it's
was that enough information?
Yeah, that's helpful.
Okay.
I think so. I mean, what can I'm trying to sum up the theme of it without giving away the endings.
Pretending.
The core of the play, as I was mentioning earlier, back to what Ev was saying, is that it's about female autism and masking, written and, you know, performed, created by autistic creatives, in a way that's never been represented before. And masking is very much what the play is about, so in various guises. So Maddie is pretending to be often something or someone she's not, to avoid, you know, and it's a very sort of fun, playful, and at times silly play, but it's all a ruse to distract from
despair,
the sort of the truth of her traumatic upbringing, the reality of
it,
the harsh reality, exactly. So there's misdirection is a big part of Maddie's character. So that's, and Nick's and Ev's, especially Nick's, and then we have a fantastic magician involved called Wayne. Wayne's last name is
Wayne
Knight.
Fox.
Wayne Fox.
Wayne Fox.
Yes, Wayne Fox. Sorry, Wayne Fox, who's fantastic and is a he's a member of the Magic Circle.
Yeah.
I don't know how much I can say because they're quite a secret organisation.
Member of a secret Magic Circle.
I think saying secret isn't really a secret anymore. But yeah, so Nick's is our director Nikki's brilliant idea was to. There was already some magic in the script, but it was kind of a little bit throwaway. So there were a couple of magic tricks that Maddie uses early on as misdirection from the pain of her reality when she's talking to people. And Nick's incorporated a bit more of that. So it's been, no pun intended, it's been a juggling act to kind of not amp it up too much and distract too much from what the play is about. And so it's extremely interesting. There's lots for people to appreciate. There's drama there's comedy. I think if I do comedy, it's always tinged with, comedy is kind of tragedy anyway, as we all know, but just looking at it from a different angle. But I'm more rooted in comedy drama, I think. So there's a bit of something for everyone. There's magic tricks, there's awful vaudevillian jokes, there's sort of Tommy Cooper-esque jokes and magic tricks, there's animal, there's invisible cats, there's ghost cats in there, and there's that's not giving away too much, I hope.
You gave away a lot there.
That's okay, sorry, but that's a taste of people. But yes. Anyway, Joseph, sorry. So there's lots in there for everyone. I think it's I wouldn't go as far to say it's family friendly, but there's something in there for everyone.
So my final question is, do you have any top tips for neurodivergent creatives?
Ooh, top tips.
Hairstyling.
Hairstyling. I think my top tip would be like, it's gonna sound so lame, but just the fact that you're not as alone as the world thinks you are would be my top tip. Like even just, you know, meeting Josh, like I was like, oh my God, you get it, I get it. Oh my God, this I'm not going crazy. Like you feel the same things. You experience these things too. And it's just such a nice sort of warm feeling to feel like, no, like this is okay. It's okay to feel like this. It's okay to be it's okay not to know what's going on all the time. It's okay to be scared. It's okay to retreat. It's okay to give yourself time and extra time if needed, as opposed to people who aren't autistic or neurodiverse. And I would think another tip is to not blame yourself, like, and not put so much pressure and weight on yourself, because the world is doing that anyway. And if you manage to be around other people who are creative and also may not be neurodiverse but have the sensitivity to understanding those things, then you know it can be such a positive, loving, growing experience, and yeah, you feel human. That's me.
Sorry to sound trite, but self-care is essential, and I think that should be top of the list, because I mean, during COVID, I think I've burned myself out like 5 or 6 times, and I mean, it just sometimes it's so bad that it makes work impossible. So even if you only, and I'd understand that perspective, even if you only care about, you just want to have a career and make great stuff and have fun and be successful, which is great too, but you won't be able to do that if you don't take care of yourself. Yeah, exactly, which is the same for anything, I think, you know. So mental health just as important as physical health. The other thing I would say is, again, quite a lot of these sentiments are echoing Ev's, and there's a lot of pressure here for me that if anyone sees this, I want to make sure I steer people. You know, everyone has their own paths, but I don't want to potentially damage anyone's lives or send them down the wrong path. But another thing for me is definitely that as neurodivergent people, we're extremely sensitive, hypersensitive, probably more so than your average person, to emotionally, sensory wise. I think not taking things too personally, because the majority of the time I think people don't let yourself be guided too much by other people's reactions and interactions, because especially when you're working on a busy production, there's a lot going on for people, and I think neurotypical people especially, they aren't as self-conscious about these things as we are. I think they just they don't realize how they're coming across, and when you're someone that's autistic or anything ADHD or dyspraxic, because Ev and I are dyspraxic also, but especially if you're autistic, you can be extremely sensitive to these things, and it can distract you. I think from your work, and you're using your intuition, you can almost my answers aren't nearly as good as Ev's, so I'm trying to give the best. Come back to me in a minute, or I'll send it in an email if I think of like 2 or 3 really good things, and then I'll leave. But yeah, I think just looking after yourself, not taking things personally, because the majority of the time people, and this sounds horrible, but it's really not. It's quite freeing once you realize that most people don't care about you. And I don't mean that in a nasty way. That most of the time I'm phrasing that wrongly slightly, but they're not paying attention. They've got their own things to worry about. So just follow your intuition, your gut, and go with what you think's better. And feel pressure if you can avoid it, because most of the time there isn't any.
Yeah. About the whole like self-caring and not the whole thing about people, you know, like or like we are really sensitive to other people, and we read people. Like I don't think like we switch off our brains in terms of trying to read the room, read what's going on and stuff like that. And that's good in a sense that you're aware, and you know, you feel safe, and you feel like, okay, I kind of know the plot of this thing that we're doing. But you can also read too much. And I learned that, like, for instance, I might have just come off the bus or a train, and in that moment someone gave me a look, and it might not be a nice look, and I'm like, oh my god, I've done something wrong, what's happened to me, what have I done? And it might just be someone just stepped on their shoe, and they happen to be in your eye line. And then but you're going home on that the whole journey thinking, what did I do on that train? Like, what happened? What is that person? And it's like those little things, it can really, really distress you, especially when you're like, I don't know about you, Josh, but if I can't find the answers, I have to keep, it won't go off my brain. I'll keep thinking until I find the answer. Like, so this is what happened. So those things, it's always good to know that, you know, it happens to other people, but just to know that, you know, it's most likely something going on in their life as opposed to whatever you're doing to them.
Yes, it doesn't make it necessarily any easier, but there's a lot. Yeah, I don't know about you, Joseph, as well, but I get extremely anxious until like Ev said, until I have the answers. But so it's not as simple and easy as these answers paint it. That's the thing. It's finding ways, and I still haven't really found a way, to be honest, and it sounds like Ev's the same, but I think these days especially, it's okay to ask for help. It's always, well, it should always have been okay to ask for help, but it's getting better, and I think it's still difficult sometimes, but I don't think there's no shame in asking for help. And also, if you're on a job, say, you know, whether that's a creative job, a job in the arts, or any job, you know, it's okay to express, you know, upfront if possible, access needs, for example, access requirements, which I've started to realize recently. I didn't do that for myself for a long time, because of the social model of disability the world is structured, you know, I felt like I just needed to get on with things.
What was you just saying, Josh?
I was just saying about, don't test me now, because my short-term memory is terrible. I was just saying, Joseph, oh my God, what was I saying?
You were saying about how you should be open about and push for things.
Yes.
That was it. And if sorry, Ev.
No, I was just saying, like, I find it really extremely helpful with any kind of creative job that I'm doing. I tell them straight away I'm autistic. So if I'm there like rocking in the corner, or if I'm the last one I just finished a filming job, and it was a lots of sound and gunshots and things like that, and you got people, like more than 5 people around you doing hair, makeup, things like that, and it can be quite overwhelming. And but I would always in those situations just tell them, like, you know, I am autistic. you'll still have the 5 people around you, but it's almost like, oh, okay, you don't have to hide anything. So if you're twitching, if you're feeling a bit uncomfortable with yourself, if you're closing your eyes because the visual is too much, they'll know the reason for it. So you don't feel like, oh my God, I'm like, me personally, I hate sort of feeling like there's a spotlight on me. Like if I'm panicking or if something's a bit out of the ordinary that I react to, the more that they know, I think, the more that it's not so much of a shock. They'll just accept, okay, this is what she does. That's fine, kind of thing. As opposed to like, why is she over there in the corner being all scared? Which is what happens sometimes.
I've become a big believer recently, the last year or two, in advocacy, as in, like, you know, it's what I could have used really earlier on in the days. There are a lot of very toxic, because I work in, same as Ev, you know, I've worked for a long time in film, and you know, theatre's relatively new for me. It's the last few years, but then, you know, I moved moving into TV, which is an extremely supportive environment, I found, actually, and radio as well. But for me in film, when I was starting out, it could be quite toxic. And when you're not confident either, you sort of, you know, you don't feel confident enough to say too much, because you wrongly assume that other people who are probably at your level, or maybe very slightly higher up, that they know better, even, you know. And the fight, you know, again, coming back to fighting your intuition, your gut feeling, that's a big mistake to do that. I wish that I'd had someone that could have advocated for me. Some people will be fine, they can just speak their minds and confidently and not cause a scene, and someone will just be like, and most of the time you can just say, and it's these things are often never as bad as they seem. You know, you build it up, which is a very anxiety thing to do, but you often just will say to people and they go, yep, that's fine. You know, like, we can, you know, it's not as big of a confrontation as we build it up in our minds.
Heads,
yeah. So I could have really used someone to advocate for me. So if you can get someone who's confident and is 100% like they're there in your corner, who can speak up, and they can say, you know, they can say, you're worried you're not going to structure your thoughts well. Someone who can go, you know, like, and you take them aside, or they go, or they can pick up on your vibes and they go, what's wrong? Right, tell me, okay, right. And then they can go and advocate for you. So is now happening November 12th, Friday, November 12th till Sunday, November 14th. So not long to go now. We've got two
evening
2
shows and
weeks.
matinee.
That's it. 2 evening shows. Thank you, Ev. 2 evening shows. Friday, Saturday, the 12th and the 13th of November, 8:45 p.m. And then a Sunday, 14th of November, matinee at 3 p.m.
3, yeah.
Thank you, Mrs. Vinner. Great interview, and I wish you all the best with Maddie.
Thank you, Joseph.
You're too kind. Thank you.